Hey everyone, my name's Lily and I'm the book blogger behind Utopia State of Mind, and I'm going to share with you my April wrap up. By the way, please let me know in the comments what you think about my mic placement. I've been trying to get the best sound quality, which means that my mic is just basically like right in front of my face, but I know that it obscures my face a little bit. So, anyway, let me know in the comments below, but I'm going to talk about my April wrap up. The statistics for my April wrap up are a little bit weird because I started planning this video yesterday, but then I finished books since, and so I tried to adjust the statistics, and probably you could have done it a lot better than I did, but I didn't. So in April, I read 32 books, and as a total, when I had only read 30 books, I had read 50% that featured characters of color as main characters, and 30% that featured queer characters as main characters, and they were pretty on par. But then I finished two other books. So did I finish two other books or three other books? I feel like I finished three other books, but I don't actually remember. And so it did skew the statistics a little bit. So just take those statistics with a grain of salt. I want to first do my little behind the reader segment before I chat about my favorite books. I have 7 favorite books and then 2 in like a series section that I want to chat about. So in general, I think that my April, I read a lot of really good books and then a lot of really books that I really enjoyed. And then I read a lot of books that I was kind of just like meh about. Of the month so far, I think that April is the one where I DNF'd the most books. So I just feel like part of that was just my general mood going into April, but also the fact that there are a few books where I read like 50%, 60%, even 75%, where afterwards I was kind of like, I don't feel super committed to seeing how it finishes, even in like a skim reading sense. So if you want me to talk about those books in the future, just let me know. Those will be like a separate video because I don't want to bring the mood of the wrap-ups down. My behind the reader section, besides the DNFing, which kind of made me a little bit sad, in general, I felt in April really I was struggling creatively. I felt really burnt out in terms of reading, content production as a whole. I really kind of took a really strange, inconsistent hiatus off of Instagram. In general, I just felt like I was just struggling emotionally being a human on the internet. So that's why you maybe might not have seen so much from me in April, but I'm really excited for May and some panels that I have. I will link them below. So there's an author playlist, like an author panel playlist on my channel in case you're ever trying to figure that out. Of course, if you're subscribed, you'll see notifications every time I add a new panel to the channel, or a new scheduled panel, but sometimes those are hard, they can get buried in your feed. So anyway, in terms of what I did in April, I felt like the first half of it was super, super slow, and then the last half of it was kind of just like rip-roaring kind of pace-wise. In terms of my crocheting and knitting, I'll insert a clip. I did a few things. I did some more of these like coasters. You can see them behind me. I did some of that. I also did a hanging crochet plant. That was really interesting. I made a few of those. Insert the clip. You know, you're seeing the clip now. In general, I'm going to take a break from crocheting. I actually have one more crochet project that I'm going to be doing, but I honestly don't know when I'll be doing that. And knitting wise, I was trying to knit a sweater for a friend. That went really badly. I had to redo like the first quarter of the body like 3 or 4 times. It's also knit from the bottom up, which I've never done before. I thought this was going to be knit from the top down, which I've also never done before. But that's what I thought. And then when I was reading the actual pattern more in depth, I realized, no, it's knit from the bottom up. So all I really have to show you, because the other pieces are over there, I have done the body, I've done one sleeve. You can see the sleeve here. And I started the other sleeve a couple days ago. So in terms of that one, I have about a quarter or a half of the sleeve done. And then basically, if you think about it in your head, the body until your dropped shoulder and the sleeves are going to be knit now in the round up to this. So I hope that I'll finish that in May, just because I'm really itching to do something different. This is all like stockinette stitch, and I've enjoyed knitting the round. I've had to wait for new needles and like new kind of tools for it, which has also made it really slow. But I'm kind of just itching to do something else. I now understood why everyone has multiple works in progress. Until this piece, I was kind of like, no, you do your project and then you finish it and you move on to the next one. But now I understand everyone who's like working on multiple whips or works in progress for their knitting or crocheting or hobbying in general, because I'm really itching to do something different. And so it's one of those things, I'm sure you can apply this to reading, but it's one of those things where like, I want to do something different. So I'm kind of dragging my feet on this one. But if I wasn't dragging my feet, I would finish it faster. Like, is just the way it is. But I'm excited to finish this and to do from the top up as soon as I knit like in the round big wise. I've never done that and I'm intrigued. My next project after this, I've realized that I can't keep being like, oh, I'm going to knit a top and then I'll wear it in summer. It just takes longer than that. And also I'll be doing a lot of traveling within the summer. So I think I'm next just going to start a pattern. I'm going to be knitting a scarf for my mom. And I also, in my, what I'm going to be doing for myself, I want to be knitting a sweater that looks like a giant cow print. You'll see it when it's done, but that's it, basically. In April, I had a bunch of really fantastic reads. I'm going to start off with first the YA picks. There are the most YA picks, and there are 3 adult picks. I'm going to do this basically in YA and adult. In terms of YA, I really loved Forget Me Not. It was just, I really liked The Vow. Growing up watching that movie, I love the idea of both amnesia, but about having kind of a second chance because of amnesia. And so I loved The Vow. I love Forget Me Not so much. It's a queer YA contemporary set in high school, about to be like in the transitionary period between about to go off into college. So all of those things together were just fabulous, but the emotions and the characters were so amazing. I loved reading about this story from the perspective of the person who has lost their memory, but you also see letters from the other person as well. So it was just such a fabulous book, and I ended up finishing it days earlier ahead of schedule because it was just such an emotional and character-driven story. I think that if you love The Vow, and if you also love queer contemporary stories with a lot of romantic angst and pining and self-discovery, then you have to read Forget Me Not. I also read Ravensong, and I really loved Ravensong. I really like the idea of mythology, and this Irish mythology take just felt more unique. I feel like I've been really heavy into the Greek mythology, and I get it. That's the trend, but I needed a break, and so Ravensong was a breath of fresh air. What I also loved about Ravensong is that 2 things, actually. There's a huge core of sisterhood between the main character and her 2 sisters who are all like reincarnated Irish war goddesses. And then I loved watching their sister relationship kind of evolve, and it was just, it gets me every time. Second, though, grumpy sunshine trope in Ravensong was super strong. I loved that so much. I loved having this super grumpy like main character who's kind of like, I am above all of these humans who are just humans. I'm a war goddess. I haven't gotten all my full powers yet, but I'm above them. Kind of be like, oh, I get humanity now. And oh, another thing, the found friendship, found family trope in Ravensong was so good, and it was so cute. Also, the ending, like, I need more from Ravensong immediately. I loved the world building, even though the world building kind of comes in more towards the end in terms of kind of revelations. I was just like, one after another kind of dominoes falling. I was so intrigued. So I loved Ravensong. Next is Warrior Girl Unearthed. I adored Firekeeper's Daughter. It is such a unique take on mystery, but also feels so contemporary. Like, I love the way that one of the things I loved about Firekeeper's Daughter is it really thinks about justice and the ways that, like, as a marginalized person or as an oppressed person, the justice system is not designed for us and not designed for you. And in fact, it goes a step further and like was designed in opposition, but also in names of increasing oppression or like maintaining that status quo of oppression. So Firekeeper's Daughter does this amazing thing where it talks about how you navigate justice in a system that is not interested in your justice. And I think that Warrior Girl Unearthed just increases and evolves those themes so beautifully, especially as it talks about kind of this idea of reclaiming our history and, for example, from museums who have wrongfully stolen our artifacts and our ancestors, right? That's kind of a huge theme of Warrior Girl Unearthed, and it was one of my favorite themes, especially the way that Warrior Girl Unearthed kind of examines how we reclaim our history and like working within the sort of frameworks of society and rules and all of these systems, and also realizing when we have to be more creative and what is the idea of a warrior, and what would a warrior do essentially in these scenarios. So Warrior Girl Unearthed was one of those books where I just immediately kind of knew that I was going to love it. And then I did love it even more than I thought. It's one of those ones where I read halfway through and I knew that this was going to be an instant one that I would recommend to people. And I finished it, and it is. So Warrior Girl Unearthed is definitely a pick from me. The last one is Lion's Legacy. Lion's Legacy is like a celebration to treasure hunting and queer history. At the core of Lion's Legacy is a story that queer history has been erased and kind of not recognized by society. And it creates this idea that, like, as a queer person, that you have no legacy, you have no history, as if, like, they didn't exist before. They were only roommates. Get that kind of vibe. And so Lion's Legacy is so deeply committed to showing queer history and the ways that it is so important for it to remain alive and celebrated. At the same time, Lion's Legacy is also a book about action, adventure, and treasure hunting, treasure seeking, puzzles, and a little bit of magic as well. So Lion's Legacy was just like a book where the stakes are really high and deadly, and, you know, they're trying to find and celebrate queer history, but also it is just so fun. I loved reading this one so much. Next, I want to talk about the adult picks that I read and really loved in April. The first one is The Plus One. I'm kind of like a Maisie Eddings super fan at this point. I've loved all of them so much. I've loved A Brush with Love, Lizzie Blake's Best Mistakes, and now The Plus One. The Plus One had such fantastic character dynamics and character development for these two dual perspective characters. I loved reading these characters dealing with their own trauma and their own past, and also this like childhood relationship of rivals to rivals to lovers or rivals to romance, and trying to really figure out how we see ourselves in relation to how other people see us. I just loved The Plus One so much. I had extremely high expectations for The Plus One, and they were all met. I listened to this one on audiobook, which was spicy, but it was just such a fantastic way of having these characters feel like they're speaking to us and their insecurities and vulnerabilities and doubts becoming our own. The next one that I really read and loved was The Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee. I love Fonda Lee so much, and so I had really high hopes for The Untethered Sky, and it was entirely met. This is one of those novellas which manages to say so much in not a lot of time. It feels so, like, the ending felt so right. It didn't feel rushed. The Untethered Sky also really delves into this idea of animal companionship, but also this idea of, can our true natures ever really be changed, right? So when you're domesticating, or the idea of domestication of animals, like, can we really change an animal's nature, but also, can we really change our human nature? It was one of those books where it delves into both of these themes, really thinking about, can we change who we are? Or are we all kind of just masquerading as being more kind of, not civilized, because I don't love those connotations, but more kind of like, oh, you know, I'm playing according to the rules, but in reality, what I'm really wanting to do is kind of just like rip and burn the whole thing down. That's how I feel a lot of the time. So The Untethered Sky was really great into exploring this kind of veneer at the top of kind of everything's okay, we're playing by their rules, I'm not gonna rip, you know, my human handler's face off even though I'm a deadly bird. but also underneath, like, how does that dynamic really work? And so The Untethered Sky just felt like it delved into this theme in an action-packed way, but also in a way where it's like, I really loved reading the Dane Wild Magic stories as a kid. Something that was really touched on in the Dane series, right? This idea of, can we really change these animals or these companions that we are trying to bond with and trying to use for our own gains? But I think the Untethered Sky just goes even further in a way that felt really satisfying. And finally, I have Disorientation, which was given to me by the lovely Hannah, so thank you so much. But Disorientation was one of those books where I immediately, to everyone in my life, was like, you need to read this. Okay, that's how I felt. It is just a book that is so deeply committed to exploring nuances in a way that feels very authentic, because it's not like one of those things where it's kind of like, these are the nuanced ways of characters, of racism, of internalized racism, of privilege, and cookie cutter and done. Right? This Disorientation is so committed to exploring the nuances within people, within society, within characters, but also then not leaving us with this feeling that everything is okay, right? That was what I loved so much about this book. And the ending, specifically as like a Chinese American, I feel like Disorientation hits even closer to home. But Disorientation is a fabulous book about privilege and racism, and about our sort of changing and evolving awakening process with all of these different things. And yeah, because I'm a Chinese American, Disorientation felt very, very close to home. So it's one where I'm now forcing everyone I know in my real life to read it and then let me know their thoughts immediately. So if you've been seeing this one and not sure about the hype, just know that the hype is 100% worth it for Disorientation. Like, this book got me in a serious way. I wrote so many notes about Disorientation. I'm going to be filming a review later for it. I know that I don't normally do that for my channel, so this is an exception for a very good reason. And then finally, I want to talk about some series things that I'm reading. So basically, in April, I read 2 kind of second books. I think the first one is a trilogy. So 2 second books in series that I want to shout out in terms of sort of series that I think you should be invested in, and I think you should pick them up. So the first one is A Song of Wrath, which is a sequel to The Bones of Ruin, I think. I can't remember the titles of honestly anything at this point, but I really loved The Bones of Ruin because it gave me a very old guard vibe. It revolved around a main character who essentially kind of just kept coming back to life, and she was in a circus, and also she was in like this deadly competition in the first book. But I think what I loved in the second book, which is super well developed in the latter half of the book, is the main character having to figure out if she's monstrous and powerful, or if she, like, what is her relationship to her power and to what she can do in terms of the world and in terms of her own kind of future, if that makes any sense. It's kind of hard for me to talk about the sequel without spoiling the first and without spoiling the second, but I will say that the second one, what I felt was most compelling was this main character's evolution of her character into figuring out, what can I do with my power, right? The first one is kind of figuring out, what is this power? And the second one is, what should I do with my power? The whole world is going to have opinions about what I should be doing. What do I want to be doing with my power, is definitely the theme of the second one, and it was more developed in the latter half. I cannot wait for the next one. I think it's a trilogy, but the first half of the second book is a lot about introducing new characters, which become more important in terms of kind of revelations for the latter half. And the next one is The Bone Shard Emperor. I just got in the mail, basically, my copy of The Bone Shard War, so I'm very excited for that. But The Bone Shard Emperor, it never felt rushed, while also It's one of those things where it feels like a sequel that is kind of chugging along, driving the force of the book. I think the Bone Shard Emperor really delves into leadership and how we can be a good leader, even if our predecessors were not good leaders. This is a theme that is discussed in a variety of different characters, not only the main character. Actually, it's multiple perspectives. So it's discussed in a variety of different characters in their multiple perspectives. And it talks about, like, what do we really do with power, and what do we do? Honestly, people don't believe us. The Bone Shard Emperor is a sequel that I just deeply enjoyed. I listened to this on audiobook because it's voiced by some of my favorite audiobook narrators ever. We have Emily Wu Zeller, and we also have Natalie Nautilus. Those two are some of my favorite auto-buy narrators. So I knew that I had to listen to the audiobook. And the Bone Shard Emperor was such a satisfying sequel. Like, I think that sometimes, I've said this 5 million times, right? But I think that sometimes in a story, especially a series, we can get so wrapped up in what happens when we get that thing that we wanted. And the Bone Shard Emperor is kind of like, did we really want that? Like, now that we have what we thought we wanted, is it what we always thought it would be? And the answer, of course, to everything is no. It is not. So the Bone Shard Emperor is deeply committed to this theme, and I've already started the Bone Shard War, listening to it while I knit, and I can already tell that it's just continuing that theme. And it is just so fabulous. So that's my April wrap up. Let me know what your favorite book of April was, and also about my mic placement. Please let me know. I'm really excited to be seeing you in the rest of my May panels and also the videos, which are a little bit kind of like, I'm filming at very strange times. So I'm excited to see you in the future. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you have a really great reading day, week, month, and the rest of your year. And I will see you in the next video.